with me, sir. Stay with me. Clear!
Where's your mom or dad?
I don't know.
I can't leave you here. I'll walk you to the L.
I think this thing is really happening. You can see it out there.
Can I have your attention, please? We have shelter. We have food. This is the best thing that could have possibly happened.
We're the traveling symphony. We travel for a reason. Just tried to make the world make sense for a minute.
No one finds people from before.
Sometimes I think we should be out there looking for them.
I come to you with an invitation to the Museum of Civilization.
Beware the prophet. Beware the children who follow him.
What happened to you in the first 100?
I was lucky. It had grown up who cared about me.
Welcome to the Museum of Civilization.
The before. It's coming back. I won't let it.
We have to abandon the future. All that matters is the now and what got us to this point. And we're in this together. And we're a family now.
So, how many people have we seen now? Plow guy, the two bandana meth guys.
The lady with no eyes.
The lady with no eyes.
Steindorff, o papel das emoções para influenciar a arte. Produtor da aclamada série Station 11, Scott Steindorff encontrou seu verdadeiro propósito ensinando sobre emoções e como utilizá-las para influenciar a arte. Além de professor, ele atua na capacitação de conselheiros e psicólogos licenciados para apoiar indivíduos neurodiversos e suas famílias. A motivação vem do fato de Scott fazer parte do espectro e ter no audiovisual encontrado de alguma forma um porto seguro, uma sensação de adequação. Nesta conversa, ele irá compartilhar como encontrou seu caminho e como tem trabalhado com alunos e conselheiros para inspirar e colaborar para que mais pessoas consigam canalizar suas emoções para influenciar a arte. Senhoras e senhores, Scott Steindorff.
Obrigado. I know one word in Portuguese, sorry. Okay, Brazil, are you ready for a Hollywood producer to get real about his life? Because I'm going to get honest and raw. So, how does everyone feel today? And maybe a better question is, do you really understand how you're feeling? You know, we see somebody and we go, how are you? Oh, I'm great. But are we really great? Were you taught about feelings? You know, did you understand how you really feel? No. Is it the truth? Are you your authentic self? How many people in this room were taught about their feelings from their parents or their school teachers? One? No one. We were taught, or at least I was taught, not to feel. Don't get angry. Don't get mad. Stop doing that. You're overly excited. Stop crying. Stop feeling. Just be. Well, to be is to feel. And the truth is, the essence of life is feeling. We breathe and we feel. That's the human experience. And we're taught not to feel. So how are our lives going to develop if we don't understand feelings? I, like many, I wasn't taught at all how to feel. I grew up in a farm town in Minnesota. My dad was a businessman. My mom was a nurse. They were not really emotional. And it wasn't a very feeling family. And it was very difficult because I'm highly sensitive. And I feel too much. I see and feel too much. And, you know, from an early age, I was taught to suppress my feelings. And when we suppress those feelings, they go into our body. They don't leave us. You know, it's like bad memories. We think they go away, but they reside within in our bodies. So the essence of our lives is to feel. Our thoughts, our behaviors, our personality is driven by how we feel. So why is it so misunderstood? Why is it dismissed? Shouldn't we learn how to feel? How many people are artists in this room, in the film and television or art world? Raise your hands. So, aren't we in the business of selling feelings? Isn't that the primary purpose of art, is to make us feel something? So, I'm going to give you my story to allow you to understand how I have learned about feelings and how I learned how to express my art. So early on in my life, my father was a businessman, and he used to say, "You're going to grow up and be a businessman, and there are no feelings in the boardroom." So that's what I was taught. And I had difficulty as a boy with speech. And it wasn't until later in life that I was diagnosed with Asperger's, high-functioning autism. And I couldn't make eye contact with people. And I would stare out into space, and I had difficulty with motor skills. I couldn't put things together, and it was a very difficult childhood. And in school, I started getting teased because I'm looking up at the sky, and I'm socially awkward, and my speech isn't great, and I have a speech impediment, and it was a very difficult childhood, and I started getting bullied. And when I started getting bullied, I started daydreaming. I withdrew within myself. And us people on the spectrum do a thing called masking. So I would hide how my true feelings were and smile. But deep inside, I was in such distraught, such pain, because I was dismissed, I was rejected, and I felt horrible about myself. And I had no one to talk to about it. I couldn't talk to my parents about it. I couldn't talk to my siblings about it. And at that time in my life, I didn't have a lot of social friends. My family had a big piece of property, and we had horses, and so that was my escape. And my escape was to go into my imagination. You know, I would drift off in school, daydreaming and not paying attention, and then one day in the fourth grade, my teacher took me outside and he said, "I think you're taking drugs. So you don't make eye contact with people, you can't focus, and you're daydreaming. So we're going to call your parents and the principal and have a conference." And And I cried because I was emotional, and I was shocked that they would think I was taking drugs. I'm 62, so that was my autism diagnosis at the age of 10. I'm taking drugs. So they have the meeting, you know, with the principal and my parents, and they have a school counselor, and the school counselor comes in and goes, he's just a very highly sensitive kid. So I got diagnosed with what we now call HSP, highly sensitive person. And it was difficult for me. You know, I would cry myself to sleep. I felt totally rejected. And so my only escape was the land we lived on, and I started reading books and really getting into my imagination. That was my escape to go within myself. And today, I read over 100 books a year. My idea of a Friday night is to go to a bookstore, not a club. I love reading, and it was something that saved my life. But the bullying continued, and it got worse, and my grades declined, and I started having very low self-esteem, low self-worth, and it wasn't getting better. And it didn't get better until there was a program at school called MARS, which was music, art, reading, and speech. And obviously I loved art, but I didn't have great motor skills, so I was a terrible painter. I just appreciated art. And because of my autism and ADHD, I write upside down, and I write on a computer with one finger. And so art was a difficult class for me, but I really had fun with it. Reading was obviously my favorite class, and then speech ended up becoming a theater class. And there was a popular program in America, a comedian called Flip Wilson, and he used to do this character called Geraldine, and he'd play his mother. And so I came to school, and I could play Geraldine and do the voice, and I wore a costume, and I found a way to express myself, playing my mom. That was my start in Hollywood. And so, but I found safety in theater. And so, you know, I was 12 years old when that started happening. And it enabled me to express myself, but I still couldn't get in touch with those feelings deep within me. But it was my happy place. And soon the bullying continued, but I started getting a little self-esteem from the theater and start feeling that there was a possibility I could do something in my life. And soon after that, as the bullying continued, one day the bully came up, the big kid bully came up to me, and I said, I don't want you to call me names anymore, you or anybody in the class. I actually stood up in a class and stood up for myself for the first time at 12 years old. And I said to the bully, I want to fight you. And I was half his size. And after class, I fought him, and I knocked him out with one punch, and the bullying stopped. So I was on my way. So I ended up moving to a new school, and in that school, I didn't have the horrible names or any of that. And they had theater and sports, and I started excelling and started getting self-esteem and watching a lot of movies. Then I started my love of movies. And, you know, back then a movie would be in the theaters for years, like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and The Godfather, and all these great movies started happening. And my father loved movies, so we would go to the movies all the time. And I decided at the age of 16, I want to do movies. I had no idea how or what I was going to do in them. I just wanted to be in the movie business. And so, you know, the high school theater teacher told me I was extremely shy and not in touch with my feelings. And so it's pretty hard to express yourself as an actor if you can't feel, because that's what you're doing as an actor. You're imitating the emotional life of another, and that's creating a character that is relatable to us. So the great movies, the great TV shows, the great writing, the great paintings, the great music is all about the expression, not of an idea, but a feeling. The feeling comes before the idea. You can have the best idea in the world, but if it has no feeling behind it, we're not going to relate to it. It's not going to have that meaning to us. Feeling gives us meaning. So I started excelling at skiing. I was, as I told you, I was raised in Minnesota. Skiing's probably not a too familiar thing here in Brazil. And I got really good at skiing, and there was a thing called freestyle skiing where you did ballet, where you did trick skiing and you put music together with it, and then you did aerials and acrobatics on skis. So I became pretty proficient at this, and it was a way for me to express myself. It was my first successful art project, was to ski. And as I'm dancing on skis, I'm also expressing myself, but I'm also skiing over my feelings, all those painful feelings that I left behind and traumas as a child were just pushed down further and further. So it was a great escape for me. It was a great thing in my life. It was a great way for me to learn how to express myself. And I got on the U.S. ski team and started traveling the world. And, you know, I was fourth in the world at this. And then I started, you know, I was doing triple flips on skis and all that crazy stuff. And I ended up crashing, and I dislocated my neck and ruptured my sternum and cracked my ribs. And I couldn't continue doing that anymore. So I ended up going, now my family's living in Arizona, and so now I go into business at a very early age. I'm going to Arizona State University studying theater and business. So my theater was continuing, but my father was like, you need to go into business. And I ended up going into business, and I was really unhappy. And my feelings after my ski career, I got extremely depressed, and my depression got worse and worse, and I would start feeling some of these painful feelings I had, and soon I started drinking. And I started drinking, and I remember consciously telling myself that if I drink enough, I won't feel for a couple of weeks. So I would drink not to feel. You know, because we do a lot of things in our lives to change how we feel. we escape a lot with activities and situations to change how we feel and not deal with those feelings. And so I started drinking a lot, doing cocaine, started cocaine, and when I was on cocaine, all those painful feelings went away. And I started feeling really good about myself, so good about myself that I couldn't stop. And I would do it until I couldn't get it anymore. And at that point in my life, I was doing so much. I was 23 years old, and I would stop breathing. And I ended up in the hospital, and it got really bad for me in a very short time, and I'm very fortunate that it happened in a very quick manner, but I ended up in rehab. And at that point, I wanted to change my life. And in rehab, you know, we were doing a lot of therapy and a lot of work, but it was really just the surface. And they mentioned to me that I probably suffered from, at the time, ADD, that I couldn't focus, that I had attention deficit disorder. And I was really upset by that diagnosis. I did not want to accept that all those things I knew about myself. I could not organize myself. I could not organize schedules. I could not do a lot of things that come naturally to a lot of people. And I denied it, and I dismissed it, and I did not want to deal with it. And I remember feeling again, a lot of those feelings from childhood started coming up again. And all of a sudden, I started making money. And money became my cocaine. And in a very short time, because of my family's business, I ended up making a lot of money, which was probably the worst thing ever for me, because it also dismissed my feelings. It pushed everything down. And I started getting success, and I thought material success, and I got married and had 3 babies, and now I have stress in my life. And the stress in my life further diminished my feelings. You know, I would numb my feelings with my success, with my, you know, work. And I was just totally not living at 100% capacity. Because I really believe unless we're dealing with our emotional life, we're diminishing our life. To live 100% life, we're in touch with our feelings, we're in touch with our spirit, we're in touch with all aspects of ourselves. And stress and struggle and all of that push and numb our feelings to the point we get sick and we can't sleep and we struggle with conversations. And because of my autism, as I'm becoming successful in business in my 20s, I'm having business lunches, and the people that work for me are kicking me under the table because halfway through a conversation, I'm staring at the ceiling because I can't make eye contact. I didn't start making eye contact with people until I was 40 years old, and I still struggle with it. It's very difficult for me to make eye contact. And I was struggling with ADHD, so I had to have 2 assistants manage my life. And I was privileged, and I had the opportunities at that point to cover up what was difficult for me in my life. But it was still such a struggle emotionally and intellectually in my life to connect that. And it got worse and worse and worse. And then I was unhappy with what I was doing in my life because it wasn't my purpose. You know, my purpose and my dream was to make movies and not be in business. And so I did that thing where I left my business and I moved to Hollywood with 3 babies. And that's where I started doing the work that I needed to do to succeed in my dream, but also to succeed as a person. So it wasn't easy for me to transition from business to Hollywood. It was a very difficult, I struggled with my art. I did not want to be a producer because I was a real estate developer and I didn't like all the headaches and all the organization of being a producer. So I became a writer, and that's what I wanted to create. And I didn't want to be a TV or a movie star, but I continued acting in theater because it was my expression. And then I started to really realize something needs to change within me. And my youngest daughter has ADHD, and she's an artist, and at the age of 8 was diagnosed with ADHD, and then soon after that they put her on medication. And I was really against her taking the medication. I'm still not a fan of medication. And we struggled with each other and our relationship because of this. And then one day as I was yelling at her, she said, "Dad, you're autistic. You need to get help. It's not me. You need help." And I was shocked to hear this. And at the same time, I asked my other 2 children, "Do you think I'm autistic?" And they didn't know a lot about it, but they both looked it up and go, "Yeah, Dad, you're autistic." So I ended up seeking help and getting diagnosed late in life with Asperger's, which is the equivalent, but I don't like any of the labels. I'm autistic. And when I did my diagnosis, they went to all my children, my ex-wife, my business partner, my mom, and interviewed them because I could not see clearly who I was, which is one of the traits that I have of autism. And it was really, really painful to be in your 40s and to look at yourself and go, "My God, I've lived my whole life without knowing I have this." And to understand what it was. And I had to be on a phone call with my therapist and my daughter. And it was very painful because she was like, "Dad, your tone of your voice was always like this, like you were mad at me. And then mid-sentence, you would walk away from my friends. So I didn't want to bring my friends around when I was a little kid." And all of my kids had similar experiences. Or, "Dad, you'll have a meltdown because you can't fix your car. And you have an extreme meltdown that you can't change a tire on your car." And this was very hard to to face in my life. And I had a lot of regret. You know, I've lived a whole life not understanding what was, I don't like to use the word what was wrong with me, what I didn't understand about myself. Because what I didn't understand about myself was causing a lot of people harm. Being very abrupt, very direct. Couldn't make eye contact. So it was embarrassing to my children and my family. Why are you behaving this way? So it was a struggle to face all of that. And to not understand how to express my feelings or what I was feeling. So I ended up working at what I can do to change some of my behavior. I'm not going to change how I'm wired. I'm wired differently. Most people are neurotypical. I'm not neurotypical. So what can I do about it? And so I had to start a lot of work on myself to understand how I was behaving, how I was feeling, and how I was reacting to life. And it's been a long process. And because I'm this voracious reader, I started reading a lot about the subject, a lot about the brain, and then I realized my problem is feeling. Because I'm expressing the wrong feeling at the wrong time. I'm laughing when you're crying. I'm crying when you're laughing. It's all mixed up for me. So I started reaching out to people, authors and psychologists and psychiatrists, and to find out how I can understand my feelings. And I have spent over 10 years doing research on that. And what I've realized is most people that are therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors that are treating so many people for so many different things don't understand autism, don't understand feelings. I mean, right now there's hundreds of books about emotions, about how the brain supposedly manufactures our emotions, but there's not one book on feelings. Not one book. There's a children's book, one children's book that I've discovered in 2022 about feeling. So I've had to do a lot of work to try to understand how I feel and why I feel that way. I've had to do a lot of writing, and I've had to do a lot of self-analysis because I discovered through all of my research there wasn't a lot of people that understood this topic. And it's the most important thing in our lives. And I had been in therapy for years, and not one therapist brought up the fact that you're ADHD or you're autistic, or you have a feeling issue. So we need to change all of that. You know, we need to change the whole system, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room that are in the creative field, because I discovered it in Hollywood in the creative field, that are on the spectrum that don't know they're on the spectrum. And why it's important to understand if you're on the spectrum is you can understand yourself and how to express yourself and express your art, and to understand how to be in relationships, how to be a parent, how to be a good person. And it's not like I was a bad person. I'm just was like a robot at times, and very direct, and didn't like a lot of social interactions, and didn't grow up understanding that. So I've had to learn how to live as an adult, because I didn't understand this as a child, because I was constantly getting bullied because of how I was wired. So what I've discovered for myself is that I have to identify my feelings. So I have to do a lot of work to identify, what am I really feeling? I have to understand how I'm really feeling. What is that feeling? Why is that feeling there? And why is it important for me? Because it's my life. It's my work. Then I have to process it. I'm feeling sad. Why am I understand I'm sad, but process, why are you feeling sad? And then to learn how to express it. Because expressing our feelings is everything. So I'm not 100%. I'm not cured. I have to work at it every day. I express myself inappropriately at times, not as often. I get in a loop of a feeling, and I'll stick with that feeling and repeat it. And what I learned for me is I got in loops. So I would listen to the same music over and over and over and over again. I would go to the same restaurant, order the same food. I would go out to dinner with the same friends. And I had to change all of that for me, that behavior. Understand it, process it, and try to expand my music, expand my dining, expand where I go in the world, expand what I do in my work. And I don't do it 100%. I still like the same restaurants. It takes work for me to do that. But that's how I function. And I'm learning life. And as I'm learning life, and I'm learning about how I'm feeling, I'm realizing it's my superpower. It's my gift. Because my gift is, if I can understand a feeling, I can express that in my art. I can write projects, I can produce projects that are meaningful to me and hopefully meaningful to you. Because the best TV shows, the best movies, the best paintings, the best music is an expression of a particular feeling. I got out of the notion that, oh my God, I have a great idea for a movie. You can have the best idea for a movie, and if it doesn't have characters that express something emotionally, it's not going to work. How many people have watched a movie, action movie, or whatever it is, and they're not feeling it? I wasted a lot of time writing a lot of scripts, getting rejected, getting turned down, because I didn't understand that. I'm like, how can you not want to make my movie? This is such a great movie. Characters are flat, and they're acting like robots like me, you know? Nobody wants to watch that. So it's like music. We listen to a song on the radio, and it makes us feel a certain feeling. And sometimes we time travel. Oh, that was when I first dated my first girlfriend, when I heard that song and I was in love, and you time travel emotionally. Or you look at a piece of art and it reminds you of a place that you were at, that you were depressed, or your parents died, or whatever, so you feel grief. So it's everything in art is the expression of not an idea, an expression of a feeling. So how you feel matters, because if you're a writer, or you're a painter, or you're a musician, you have to understand how you feel to express that in your work and to make that idea producible. The best actors in the world work on their feelings. So I was lucky enough when I started in Hollywood to meet this awesome acting coach named Eric Morris that worked with Jack Nicholson, and he's worked with so many great actors. And his whole class is about teaching you how to feel. Because his whole work is about, you need to understand how to play the piano with your feelings. Because if you can play all these chords and you can make people feel happy, joy, sad, grief, sadness, and all these feelings, that's an interesting character. Because as an actor, you have to be able to do that. As a writer, you have to be able to do that. And as a producer, you have to be able to communicate this to the writers, to the directors, to the actors, of why a scene's not working, why something's not working. It's always because we don't feel it. It's just, you know, how many people have seen Station 11? Thank you. It's playing here in Brazil now. But it's one of my favorite projects that I've ever done, because the writer and I bought, it was based on a book in 2014. I read the book in one day. I bought the rights to the book the next day. And it took me years to get it made, until a writer came in, Patrick Somerville, and we connected on why the story mattered. It's like that you can go through a devastating event, pandemic, and get to the other side of it and have joy and be able to function with the expression of art. And every time he started writing the scripts, all we'd talk about is feelings, 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 feelings. What do you feel? And it's the work I'm most proud of, because I promise you, if you see the show, you will feel something. And that's been my journey in Hollywood, is doing projects that express something. You know, I did a movie called Love in the Time of Cholera, and at the time I was struggling with the concept of love because I didn't have self-love. And I remember getting the rights. It was a big struggle to get it. And then sitting down with the writer and reading every book about love. But that was all intellectual. I couldn't feel it the way I wanted to feel it, the way I have felt it in my life. And how this man in the story falls in love with somebody and she's not loving him back. And it was an important story for me to get made. And I'm glad I did, because it was about feeling. And every project I've done is about the expression of a feeling. I did a mini-series for HBO called Empire Falls with Paul Newman and a lot of great actors, Ed Harris, Philip Seymour Hoffman. And it was all the expression of feelings of a family in a small town in Maine, which was very similar to how I grew up. So I look for stories, and audiences want to watch stories that make them resonate with the characters, with the ideas, with human emotions. It's the most important thing. Art is selling feelings. I'm in the business. I don't sell ideas. I sell feelings. And everybody always asks me, oh, I'm moving to Hollywood. What should I do? When should I move to Hollywood? And I think it's really important that people, artists, wherever you are today, wherever you are in the world, if you're here in Rio de Janeiro and you have a great idea and you put that emotion and feeling in it, and it's a great story, we've never seen it before, and it's going to make us feel something, you don't have to move to Hollywood to do that. You can find people like me to get that on the screen if it's extraordinary. Because right now, what's selling in Hollywood, in music and movies and TV, is something we've never seen or felt before. Take us to a place we've never been before. Don't write something familiar to another project. Oh, it's like Top Gun, or it's like Station 11, whatever. Do something that we've never seen before. And for me, the most important thing is to be optimistic, is to be positive. Because when I'm in a happy state, when I'm in an optimism, a state of optimism, of hope, I can write and create. And I can also be a better human being. If I'm in a happy state, I'm going to interact better with you. If I'm upset, if I'm depressed, if I'm stressed out, we're not great at interacting in those states. So I've got to take a moment and slow down and try to find out, what am I feeling and how can I change that feeling, process it before I express it. Because if I'm in that state, you're going to get response. So for me, it's important for me to be in tune with life and who I am and what I'm trying to express when I step into that role as Scott the producer. It's very important for me to realize, how can I relate to you? How can I relate to you when I'm neurologically different? So how can I communicate with you? I'm a lucky guy, and it's taken me a long time to say I'm a lucky guy. It doesn't matter what's happening in your career, your bank account, your life. I'm a happy guy because I'm understanding who I am and what I'm trying to express, and I'm able to express art like Station 11 and feel very proud and do other projects similar to that not similar to Station 11, but that are expressing ideas. And it's important for me to reach out to people that may be wired differently, and especially children and young boys and girls, so that they understand who they are and why they're behaving and thinking and being the way they are. Because it's a gift. I'm so lucky to be autistic. I'm so lucky to be who I am. Not what I have or what I've done. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Thank you.